G'day guys, it's Calvin from the Cartoon Company in New Zealand. I am excited, although I will try to restrain my excitement and keep my speech speed down. Today is engine startup day. I've been wiring an RX7 race car, so this video is going to serve as both instructions for Graham and his mechanic and as a brief of what I did as the lead into the video series I've made on wiring a 1uz VVti or a 3uz to a Link ECU. I've been absolutely balls out lately with work, and so things haven't quite gone to plan, and it's meant to be one day at a time, but whole weeks have attacked me lately. But I've stayed positive, and I refuse to turn out crap work or drop my standards. This means I've been working some big hours to try and get everything sorted and stay as productive I can in the workshop. If you contact me, you may find in the mornings or for half the day that you will get a reply from my new office lady. Also has a V8 Lexus in the fleet. It also is going to give me another camera angle because I'll have a camera person. Now, back to this Loom. We have a Link Thunder. We have a Link Dash. We have a relay and fuse box and a wiring loom. It starts here at the ECU. There's wires onto an engine. There's a map sensor that will need a little bracket popped up there or mounted however we see fit. The loom runs along the top of the fuel rails. I tuck it down under here and it comes up. Here's the earth, and I chose to put the earths there because I think they're going to be a pain in the backside on the back. That'll make them much more accessible. There is a fuel pressure sensor that needs to be tapped into the fuel rail. There is an oil pressure sensor, just one, goes into the back of the filter block, which is already fitted. There is an oil temperature sensor. No problem if it's not fitted straight away. It was suggested it might go there, or it can go back here into the sump, because of course we've got a rear sump on this vehicle, being an RX7. If it goes in here, then we can just cut the wiring off and shorten it up. We have the drive-by-wire throttle body, which just plugs in, and that one plugs in like standard. I should say the map sensor needs a bit of vacuum line to here. We have an air temp sensor. This air temp sensor needs to be fitted somewhere into the intake. I think there's a piece of aluminium in here somewhere. We can weld that fitting on and push the sensor in. I don't want it right at the top because stuff can hang off it. On a bit of an angle is better, preferably not at the bottom half of the pipe. Move around to this side. There's another earth, and I've supplied a new water temp sensor. We're not using the one for the gauge because we've got that dash. Down here, I was doing testing. Look at that. There's the wiring. There's the wiring for the alternator. Heat proof. Should we set it on fire? I think we should. Let's set it on fire. This is real fire. This is the real Loom. Look at that. No problems. Remember about the smoke, that's just a bit of the fiberglass. Zero damage. Because that runs, that's hot, ow, ow! Because that runs down to the alternator, I still don't want it touching the exhaust, but just prevention because it is pretty hot down that area. We have the small coils, which all plug in. And again, the wiring loom, wiring harness runs along the top of the fuel rails. We have injectors in the manifold, and you'll actually be getting this manifold, lower manifold, will be going with the job, and you can flick me your one back. Also, see this knob that's here? There's normally one on the back of the cylinder head there. Needs to go. So the back of the right hand and the front of the left hand. So those injectors will fit. The humming from the throttle is normal. I have a second air temp sensor. So I can log the temperature of the fuel actually going down the manifold. So we can see what that's like up in there. VSV for the intake manifold flaps, or the AVIS, you'll get a new one. I'm not going to risk a second-hand one. You would not believe it. I would. I was working on this engine the other day, testing things, watching the manifold flap work, and then it didn't. And it literally failed in front of my eyes. And it's been a little bit intermittent in the last little bit, on and off. So even my engine needs a new VSV. Lucky I've got them. Across the back of the engine here, don't have to worry about earths. We have the two wideband plugs. The reason I put them close to each other is so that if you do have a fault, you can swap them over. Hopefully you can get at those okay. Now the wideband sensors in the bottom of the exhaust is not ideal. They'd be much better at the back, up in here. Not ideal is a term that I would use when, by the correct standards, it's not the right spot. However, I've got several of these running on an aftermarket computer with those sensors stock position, and they work fine. Talking to different manufacturers about the wideband sensor, some will say up to 60 inches from the exhaust port. However, that particular sensor has been used in some Volkswagen turbos, and it's like 100 millimeters off the back of the turbo. And that's where a manufacturer is putting them. No wonder we get so confused. What I recommend is put it where it works, where it's easy to get at. Avoid the very top of the pipe. Kind of avoid the bottom. But if you're not getting moisture build up, they generally work just fine. Race car, we'll see how it goes. If you do change your exhaust, possibly move them towards the top of the pipe a little bit further back. But as I said, I've got several cars running with them in the stock position, no problems. Right, we also have two temp sensors, thermal couples for the exhaust. There we go, EGT, K-type. So they can plug in and be fitted to the exhaust. You'll need to get the correct bung to weld in the exhaust. Injectors, we've discussed. Air temps, we've discussed. Oil and fuel pressure, we've discussed. Oil temp, fitting the loom. Yep, that's good. I'm happy. I've put this big grommet in. Hopefully you can get everything through the hole. Fuse box. Fitment of the fuse box. Super easy. This bit with the tape on it and the big red wire going in at present. There's the clip. And it can go on both sides, so it's easily removed. Those plugs plug in. Easy as, just plug them in, don't have to do anything. This plug will connect to the dash, and I will go through and give you a diagram of that. The only real important ones to make it run are ignition, and if you want to use the start relay that's in this fuse box, the start. Otherwise, put ignition in, turn it on, make it go. Outputs, this one, it's got fuel written on it. That goes to the fuel pump. And these two are for fans if you want them. Pressure sensors. I jump around. My mind's like this as well. For the fuel pressure sensors and the oil pressure sensor, I used to run a 100 and a 150, but I was finding it was too easy to get them round the wrong way. But now I use a 150 for both, so if you need to keep a spare, it's just like I do on the sprint boat, one sensor in the spares box can be used to replace both of them. Right, the dash wiring. Woo! Dash is super easy. There's this one here. Hopefully that's long enough to run across the vehicle. And the dash just plugs in. It was like one of the easiest dash installs because I didn't put anything extra. I've left a fairly generic setup in that dash, so that can all be adjusted to the way that you like it. And we'll discuss that further. I've done a setup video, but we'll see how we get on. It can be set up. Okay, next step. I think it's time to make it run. Good plan. I'm going to take some moments, plug it all up, get it all ready, and then let's make some noise. I've also found a speed sensor. Hopefully that will work, and we've got enough room to pop that into our gearbox. And it's got a Loom that just plugs in. And these two little wires here, they are for the reverse switch in the gearbox. I'm not sure what terminal was on that one. So if we pop a plug on them, just to keep it neat. The reverse lights go back to the ECU. So we're keeping an eye on the driver. If he puts it in reverse, or we can give a reference point. If he has an off, if you have an off, and we can watch and see what happens. So also this little dongle, OBD2, goes to your smartphone. Allows to clear codes if you don't have your laptop. Righty ho! Let's make this thing go. Got oil pressure, that's good. It's got fuel pressure, that's good. Oh, it stopped. At least it goes. Well, that was its first start. Sounded pretty good to me. Fuel pressure's low because my fuel pump doesn't have as much pressure. Vroom vroom! So, ignition in here, that red dot, that's ignition. One on the other side is start. Those are the two main ones, and it will run. In this plug, there's also an output for the alternator light. There's an ignition output if required, and an auxiliary output and a couple of digitals. If we want to put brake switches or clutch switches. I've also been thinking that there's room in this ECU for traction control. So if you've got wheel speed sensors, traction control is a good option. The dash is working. I'm going to have a little bit more setup of the engine. So that was its very first start. I've checked most things, and I'm just going to double check the exhaust sensors, temp sensors, and then it's ready to go in a box and be fitted. It's cool as. It's actually really, really easy to put together. Done a bit more setup. Made some changes in that ECU. Watch how it starts now. One with the dot is the ignition wire. The dash powers up. My day's always better with an engine running. Right, on to the next one. The plan was to end the video there, but I thought maybe I'll just show me removing the loom from the engine. More information, providing it's correct, is really helpful. And often different people will pick up different things or that little bit of information from what I'm saying or in my videos. Or it'll initiate a question or a line of discussion. So I'm going to go over what is included in this, just so everything's double checked and triple checked, because this is a very important job to me, and that it is right, or as close to right as we can get it, because it's a race car and there is a development process involved. I'm going to push my stopwatch, I'm going to pack up some stuff, show what I've got, and show how easy this loom comes off this engine. Starting the stopwatch. I'm not going to go super fast because I want to be thorough. So we have the fuse box, which all just plugs in. I had already unplugged it from there. So that's going to go in the box. That's the dash plug across to the actual display. I should call it the display. And that one is the control for the powers in and out, key and stuff like that. Go in the box. I didn't ask actually if you've got an alternator light or what you've got. So let me know if you need one of those. Brand new EFI temp sensor, the water temp. I can put that on. There we go. So the other side of that plug is included. There's the AVIS VSV, so that solenoid under the intake manifold. Connectors for there. The connector for that one. There are a couple extra terminals sitting in the plug. The OBD2 dongle, so that's the fuse box setup. Pressure sensor, oil pressure and fuel pressure, or oil pressure and fuel pressure. They're both the same, avoids confusion. gearbox loom, the sensor, and the sensor works, and the extra 2 wires are the reverse switch. You can just pop a switch on, a plug onto that. So that's easy. Tuning cable for the ECU. The ECU has a bracket, there's some stickers, quick start guide, which isn't really needed because it's already set up. We're unplugging the ECU. I'm not using the wires to pull it out, I'm using the plugs themselves. Communication one is the one with the little orange O-ring. Back into the box from whence it came. The box is beating me. So that's unlocked with a tune. Good enough to start and run. That's into the box. Right, wiring loom next. Oh, we're only 3 minutes in. Okay, the exhaust temp sensors at the back here. Try not to be too rough with those, which I know sounds funny. I'm asking you to be careful with sensors that go into a 650-degree exhaust. It makes a whole lot of sense. They're already terminated and I've checked them into the ECU. The wideband sensors. And these plugs, they lift up. So they lift up, or you push away from the plug. I've shrunk them, better put these boots on. So 2 sensors. One on the, funnily enough, on the left hand and one on the right hand. So those are the sensors which have been tested and set up with this loom. I'm going to clip off the zip ties. I've got across the back. A little bracket here if you want it. And the shrink wrap is where it gets secured onto the fuel rail. We have the 2 earths at the front here. Well, one on this side and one on the other side. Oh, and then I've actually already unplugged the alternator loom. My alternator, as soon as I added the belt, started charging. Right, the earth off this side. Right, crank loom. It's a little tricky with the old thumb push under here. There we go. Oil pressure sensor. And I'm going to unplug the temp sensor for the oil pressure, but I shall plug it back into the loom. And I've chosen to go between the gap on the idler, as it just holds things out of the way. We'll plug that temp sensor back in so we don't get it in the wrong place. It has a different thread to the water temp anyway. Cam angle plug, drive-by-wire, VVTi. Very careful on the VVTi solenoids. They are a little bit getting old, and every now and then I have guys that break them off. That's not ideal. Fuel pressure. There's a stray cable tie floating around in there. So I ran those ones in behind that fuel pressure. There's a bit of vacuum line on the map sensor. That zip tie in the middle was just for assembly purposes. The sensor in the middle of the camshaft, that can be a little tricky. I'm just going to whip down here like this. Again, aiming for the clip, not yanking on the wires. Probably should unplug the TPS, shouldn't I? Right, and around to the right hand side. Unplug those injectors. And again, this one here. Sometimes I use a screwdriver, but something with a bit of a bend on it works the best. The APS. And I can just reach my little fingers down for the water temp. Now again, the VVTi. I am yet to break one. But a lot of the factory ones, the clips break off. But when you've got a new clip, it's nice and tight. I just whip it like so. I'm on video and I've practiced it before and everything went well, and I've done it 100 times before, and I'm doing it on video and no, there it goes. Don't forget the AVIS solenoid, or the VSV for the AVIS. Right. And my compressor starts up. And there we have the wiring loom off the engine. From when I started, and even packing up, 11 minutes 30, we'll stop that actually, oh, stop. 11 minutes 40. This piece of shrink wrap deliberately wasn't shrunk, and the grommet can be put wherever it needs to go. There we go, all sorted, ready to go in the box. So the loom's all off, under 12 minutes, including packing up the other bits and pieces. I suspect when it goes on there's going to be a little bit more time involved because there's some other stuff to sort out, maybe the odd bracket, welding in the air temp. Whole wiring loom off and ready to be sent. I'm also sending the lower manifold with the injectors because it's all part of the same setup. But I'm going to call this one quits. I've got some few bits after this of me revving the crap out of it as I was setting it all up. And if you'd like to see me taking the manifold off, I'm going to change the AVI solenoid in my own engine because it's buggered. So you can watch a separate video on that. Hope that's been helpful. I look forward to seeing this one going and tuned up and on the track. Catch you later. Where are my earmuffs? It's very loud and it hurts my ears. limiter has been activated. Whoop, whoop. Boom. Woo! That's really loud, even with earmuffs. But woohoo! It's a runner.